You're welcome back to the Gavel. Are resolutions made by federal lawmakers in the National Assembly binding on other arms of government, or are they simply advisory? We had a chat with a lawyer to get his perspective on this issue.
By virtue of the kind of democracy we practice, the motions and resolutions are largely advisory. And no arm of the government has the powers to impose on the other beyond what the Constitution concedes. A motion is like a piece of advice from the legislature to either the judiciary or the executive, and the receiving body or the receiving arm is not under any obligation whatsoever to respect it, to abide by it, or to play by the content of the resolution. So it's basically advisory. It's more like an instrument, a device for Parliament to make its voice known, its views about a particular subject matter known to the other arms of government. So it's left for the other arm to either accept or refuse it.
So in other words, are you saying that the motions, recommendations and resolutions by the National Assembly are not backed by law? They're not enforceable?
Well, they are not. They are not. Do not forget that Section 60 of the Constitution says that Parliament can devise its own ways of regulating its proceedings. I think that is how the issue of motions, prayers, resolutions came about. So they are binding within themselves. A resolution of the House binds members of the House because they arrive at it through a particular procedure. But it does not bind another arm of government. The
resolutions and recommendations are used as bargaining chips for future. So for you to say, is of no effect, No,
what I'm saying, once I say they are of no effect to the extent that they cannot be enforced. Of course, so many things, so many kinds of waters go under the bridge in politics. You find out that once an arm of government has made an overture to the other arm, either through ordinary application or by motion. Meanwhile, let me even tell you something. The different arms, the three arms are co-equal. None arm is obligated to take advice from the other arm. So if Parliament passes a resolution, and I can call to mind the issue of Securities and Exchange Commission during the reign of Aroma Ote, wherein they passed a motion, a resolution asking that she be fired. And something of such nature was not done. And then they sat on the budget of SEC.
Yes.
So the establishment had to source for money through other means to fund the operations of SEC. So you find out that you can say to an extent that the resolution of Parliament was effective in that respect, because since the executive defied that resolution, the legislature also played another card, which is to
hold the budget.
which is to keep the purse tied so that they cannot access it for people. So it is effective only to the extent that it forms a kind of bargaining chip. That once we tell you that, look, this IGP, we don't like what he did last time, please sack him, and you don't sack him. When you bring your budget, you can say, okay, you're asking for 10 million naira, we're only going to approve 1 million. After we asked you to sack him, you don't sack him. And because the ultimate power to appropriate resides with Parliament, you cannot challenge it. If they say they are giving you 1 million, that's the end of the show. So in a way, which means for subsequent transactions, you have to find a way to accommodate some of the emotions so as not to also fall into the wrong arm of Parliament, into the wrong side of Parliament.
But the National Assembly can amend the Constitution to make their motions binding. We've had lawmakers, particularly in the 7th Senate, we had a talk about that of the Senate, saying that they were going to amend the Constitution to ensure that the motions or the recommendations and resolutions are binding on the executive.
Well, they must well do so. But then they will have to tamper with Section 4 of the Constitution, which gives them power to make laws. A resolution is not a law, except if they want to imbue in it the quality of a law. If they amend the Constitution in such a way that a resolution becomes a kind of minor law or shadow law, and then the other arms of government are under obligation to respect it, so be it. But until that is done, the way it is, the way the Constitution is configured now, they cannot. But like I said, under the kind of constitutional democracy we have, the Parliament is superior in practice, in theory, all of them are equal. How? Because all the powers enjoyed by the arms of government are as a function of legislation. The executive has as much power as the legislature gives to it. Same thing as the judiciary.
Now, Section 88 and 89 of the Constitution, very interesting sections. We talk about, the powers of the National Assembly to carry out investigations, which it has been carrying out. We just saw one this week, the investigation about remittances and allegations of under-remittances of government agencies into the Federation account. I get a sense when reading those two sections that, and that is a question I've heard and I've even asked over time, what is the report from these investigations is not clear. I don't think the Constitution is clear on what should be done with the report from these investigations, because the Parliament is not an enforcement arm of government. So what exactly, is the issue?
The report basically has two or more values. Number one, it forms a talking point, an alternative view, that if this is the way you've been looking at it, we've conducted an investigation and we see that there is another vista to it. Fine. Secondly, do not forget that such investigations are for a purpose to prevent waste, inefficiency, and corruption. So it means that subsequently, when they want to make another law, whether be it Money Law, Appropriation Act, or any other kind of law, they will factor in some of their discoveries in the course of the investigation. To now know, assuming now they said, okay, that some agencies, some MDAs did not remit money because of ABCD, then they will couch the law in such a way as to block the ABCD avenues of leakage. You see that what they have done in the past has now been called in to assist them while they are making another law against tomorrow. Because you see, the society is dynamic, and so also is lawmaking. So if a lawmaker finds out that a law he has made is inadequate based on the dynamics of the day and based on outcome of investigation he has carried out, then it becomes incumbent on him to make sure that he develops it to such an extent that it meets with the standard, with the needs of the current reality. That's basically what that thing do. Like I said, the first thing it does is to provide a talking point, an alternative viewpoint, because those who might be the investigated people, the investigated agencies might be looking at it from one point of view, but then they now throw a light from another direction and say, no, let's not do it this way, let's do it that way. So that even for the purpose of enlightenment, both the citizens are enlightened, other MDNs are enlightened, and then you begin to find out that people will begin to carry out their businesses, their corporate businesses, in such a way as not to be caught by such investigations in the future. The executive implements the laws made by Parliament, not the views of Parliament. Resolutions reflect the views of Parliament about a particular reality.
Even investigations?
Yes. Do not forget that the executive itself has agencies that are skilled in investigation, even more than the Parliament.
Last week, the Senate Committee on Ethics and Public Petitions was looking into a petition from the former First Lady, Mrs. Patience Jonathan, about the freezing of her accounts. Now, in one of the sittings, committee members directed the banks to unfreeze the accounts of the former First Lady, and this sort of generated, some talk in the polity. We even saw in the House of Representatives, the House leader coming to say the committee, the House of Reps has not come out with a definite position because this happened in its own place. So can a committee at a sitting give directive to the institutions or government or private institutions? Does it have a legal teeth to do that?
In law, we say that an act is ultra vires, which means it's beyond their remit, it's beyond their authority, it's beyond their constitutional powers. They don't have such powers to ask a private establishment to do a thing or the other. They don't have such powers. Do not forget that their powers of oversight are limited to those areas within which they have the competence to make laws for the purpose of preventing waste, inefficiency, and corruption. These three particular categorizations must be taken into account. Now, tell me, what waste is asking a bank to unfreeze the account of Patience Jonathan? What waste is it trying to stop? What corruption is it trying to stop? What inefficiency is it trying to stop? Are they trying to prescribe to the banks had to carry
Could
out
it be inefficiency in terms of following due process? Because one of the things that came out from the committee was that the bank did not follow the due process in even freezing the account in the first place, and that there is a court order directing them to unfreeze the accounts.
Well, if there is a court order directing them to freeze the account, there's a better procedure to follow. If there is a court order, which means the bank is already in contempt, there is a better procedure to follow it than to come to National Assembly. National Assembly is not a court. They cannot enforce the judgment of a court or another of court, and they cannot add or subtract to what the court has already said.
Now, this is where we draw the curtain. It's on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us, and see you again next week.